We are only a week away from the start of the new Serie A season, and it promises to be one of the closest yet. Will Juventus win the scudetto for a 10th consecutive time, or will a new team finally stake their claim as the new number one team in Italy? I will now try to predict where the 20 teams will finish. Here we go. Starting with the relegation zone, and I have Crotone finishing on the bottom, Spezia in 19th, and I have Udinese finishing 18th. Even though Crotone have had recent experience playing in Serie A, I just think they will be the weakest link in Serie A this season with their young squad. They do have some neat players like Simon Wanko, who was the Serie B top goal scorer last season, and Ahmed Benelli, who impressed last season. And they do have experienced veteran Luca Morano leading the team, but I still see them finishing on the bottom of the table. Spezia will be playing in Serie A for the first time in their history after winning in the promotion playoffs. They have some serviceable players to keep an eye on like Matteo Ricci and Luca Mora, and additionally I think they'll surprise some teams. But they haven't really made moves so far, and it's traditionally very hard for teams in Serie A after being promoted to survive the drop, and unfortunately I see Spezia being another example of this, so it's 19th for Spezia. For Udinese, I see the 25-year streak of staying in Serie A ending. If they do end up losing Rodrigo De Paul, which I do think will happen, then they'll lack the talisman who are capable of scoring at a high volume, and it will just put even more pressure on Kevin Lasagna to score goals. Udinese were 18th in goals scored last season, and while their defense is okay, I just don't know if Udinese can hang on much longer if they don't sign new players in attack, so I have them in 18th and going down. For the teams just surviving, I have Cagliari 17th, Hellas Verona 16th, Benevento 15th, and Genoa 14th. Cagliari had a scintillating start to last season, but then only went on to win 3 of the last 23 games, which does not bode well. And while they have now permanently signed Giovanni Simeone and Marco Rog to try and stem the bleeding, they no longer have Raja Nainggolan, who went back to Inter as his loan expired. I think this team will struggle, to be quite frank, but they will just hang on and survive as the Islanders finish 17th. Genoa can consider themselves lucky for not getting relegated last season, and they haven't really brought in anyone new besides the permanent signings of Mattia Destro, Francesco Casata, and Andrea Pinamonti. With the squad being predominantly the same, I don't think they'll improve a lot, but they do have some good players in Iago Falque, Domenico Criscito, and Christian Zapata, so I do predict them to move up very slightly from where they finished in 17th last month to 16th. Benevento ran away with the Serie B title last season, and while they have never been successful in staying in Serie A more than one season, I think it'll be different this time around. They have been able to keep the vast majority of players, and they have made some good signings too. The particular signing of Kamil Glick is a superb signing and should solidify what is an already solid defense that only conceded 27 goals last season, easily the best in Serie B. I have a feeling Benevento will surprise many people and will finish 15th. Hellas Verona's recent 9th place finish will be hard to replicate, and I see them going backwards. They had one of the better defenses in the league last season, but I have a strong feeling the defense won't be as good next season, as I felt that they were a little bit lucky in a few of their games. They did, however, make an array of signings in the off-season, highlighted with the signing of midfielder Adrian Tameze. They should fend off relegation rather comfortably, but I don't see them doing better than 14th. The teams that I have missing out on the top half of the table are Sampdoria in 13th, Parma 12th, and Torino 11th. Sampdoria were in the relegation zone for a lot of last season, but were able to claw their way out for a 15th place finish. Since then, they have made a lot of signings, like in Mikael Damsgaard, and have also made permanent signings from last season's loans, like those of Maya Yoshida and Lorenzo Tonelli. They will have a deeper squad, which should help them manage their players and keep them fitter compared to the rest of the competition. And if Fabio Quagliarella can somehow keep his scoring form at the age of 38 and keep getting help from Manolo Gabbiadini, then I can see Sampdoria moving to 13th. Parma noticeably struggled late on as they ended up 11th after a solid start last year. However, I see them stagnating. While Parma have solid options and depth up front with the likes of Roberto Insigne, Gervinho, Andreas Cornelius and Jan Karamor, they have lost key player Dejan Kulusevski to Juventus, who is a major loss to the team. Additionally, They have one of the oldest defences in the league, which is highly concerning, especially that Bruno Alves turns 39 soon. But Parma are one of the best clubs in Italy in producing young talent, so I believe they'll introduce us to some promising talent as I estimate Parma to finish 12th. Torino had a concerning drop-off during last season, which saw Walter Mazzarri get the sack, but I get a feeling that Il Toro will improve decently. They conceded 68 goals last time out, but they utilised the transfer window signing Mergin Vojvoda and Ricardo Rodriguez to strengthen that area. They also have a good striker pairing of Andrea Bellotti and Simone Zaza. It is actually a decent squad with adequate players all over the park like Daniele Besselli, Salvatore Sirigu, Armando Izzo, and so on. I think last season was rather an off year for Torino, and I strongly believe they'll be much better, but just miss out on the top 10 with 11th. Teams I have squeezing into the top 10 but not doing much more are Sassuolo in 10th, Bologna 9th, and Fiorentina 8th. Sassuolo had a really good season last time out, although I am not expecting them to replicate their 8th place finish. They scored 69 goals last season, and I still fully expect them to bag 60 plus goals next season too, with both Domenico Berardi and Francesco Caputo particularly lethal in front of goal. In fact, Caputo scored 21 goals last season. But 63 goals were also conceded last season, and while they did sign multiple defenders, highlighted with the Vlad Chiriches signing, I am not a big fan of the Romanian defender, and I don't think they'll sufficiently improve their defense enough. But I am a fan of their midfield, particularly Jermaine Boga and Manuel Locatelli, so they'll still be good enough for 10th. Bologna's squad on paper may look like it's not good enough for 9th, but I'm going to look at this from a different perspective. Sinisa Mihalovic has battled leukemia and has beaten it, which is absolutely fantastic news. In fact, he actually beat coronavirus as well. And I believe that just like last season, the team will overachieve for him and will do this now to a bigger extent, with inspiration coming from Mihalovic. They made little moves of note in the summer so far, but they still have decent players in the team like Gary Medel, who's a real pit bull on the field, as well as Roberto Soriano, who's one of the better midfielders in the league. Nicola Sansone and Riccardo Orsolini are also some of Bologna's better players. A surprise pick for 9th Bologna are, but I will still stick with it as Mihalovic's victorious off-field battles will inspire the team. Fiorentina vastly improved on the horror 2018-19 season last season, which almost saw La Viola get relegated, and I predict that they'll further improve from the 10th place finish last season. Italian superstar Federico Chiesa looks like he'll stay another year, boosting La Viola, and I really think he can be the face of Italian football for the next decade. Franck Ribéry has slowed down being 37 years old, but he's still proven to be a threat at times going forward. If Patrick Cutrone stays and can get himself back into form, then he's another goal scorer. Defensively, they're very good too, with the equal 4th best defence in the competition last season, led by German Pazzella and Nikola Milenkovic, who's developing very nicely. Keep an eye on Gaetano Castrovilli too, who was impressive in midfield last year, and Bonaventura is a good signing for them as well. So Fiorentina to finish 8th for me. Now for the teams that will just miss out on the Champions League in my view are Roma, who will finish 7th, Atalanta in 6th, and AC Milan 5th. Roma are a very solid team, but I look at the squad and it just doesn't match up well against the top 6 squads in Serie A in my view, particularly that Nicolo Zaniolo tragically went down with another ACL injury recently, which I was really gutted about. Pedro is a decent signing, but he may not have the same impact that he had at Chelsea for all those years. Roma still have question marks defensively, where aside from Gianluca Mancini and maybe Chris Smalling, even though I view him as very inconsistent, I don't think the defense will overall be reliable enough at that end of the park. Their midfield looks weaker than the top teams as well. While I like Lorenzo Pellegrini, I just don't think his supporting cast in midfield is good enough to make the top 4. And while Dzeko is a nice player to have, once again, the attacking players like Mkhitaryan, Perotti and Unda just don't stack up against the true Italian elites. I have Roma in 7th, with Zaniolo's injury a big reason for this. Atalanta statistically had the best attack of any team in Serie A last season, and actually had one of the highest goal tallies in Italian history, with a mind-boggling 98 goals. Furthermore, they additionally made the quarterfinal stages of the Champions League before cruelly losing to PSG. They have held on to the vast majority of the squad too, so it might seem baffling that I have them so low. While for me, it purely comes down to the belief that I don't see them sustaining their ability to score a ton of goals again. They'll still score probably 70 plus goals again with the likes of Alejandro Gomez, Luis Muriel, Duvan Zapata and Josip Ilicic, but they just won't have another historical goal scoring season, with history also showing that it's almost impossible to do this in back-to-back seasons. Defensively, with Toloi and Palomino, they'll still be fine, and the loss of Castagna to Leicester shouldn't be a bad one, with Hateboer still there, so I still think they'll challenge for the top 4, but I have them falling short in 6th. AC Milan were undefeated in the last 12 games and have made key signings of Sandro Tonali and Brahim Diaz. Defensively, I think they'll be one of the best teams in the league. Alessio Romagnoli has now become one of Italy's best defenders and could become the best defender in the league if he isn't already, and Milan are well sorted in the fullback positions, with Theo Hernandez in particular an exciting player to watch. Tonali should strengthen the midfield and gives Milan more creativity, and this ties in well with Kessie, who's more of a physical player who's great at putting pressure on opposition players. However, I have concerns up front. Zlatan Ibrahimovic is a legend, but he will be 39 soon, and while he'll reach double digits probably, I don't know if he can get more than 20 goals this season, which Milan will probably need to make the top 4. Rebic is a great player who could score well too, and Rafael Leao as well. But overall, however, I can foresee AC Milan just being a couple of points short of a Champions League spot and finishing 5th. Making the top 4, I have Napoli 4th and Lazio 3rd. Napoli dramatically improved once Gattuso was appointed manager, albeit it was still only good for 7th. The only off-season move Napoli have made so far was to bring in Victor Osimhen for a club record fee from Lille, which is a great move for a rising star considering that Jose Callahan and Allen are both out of the club, and if they lose Koulibaly, they may struggle to finish in the top 4. If Koulibaly does end up going, I think they will still have reliable defenders in Kostas Manolas and Nikola Maskimovic, but they could still get thin in this area, so it wouldn't hurt Napoli to sign another centre-back. The loss of Allen will be felt, but as the season goes on, they'll get used to it, with Diego Demme set to play a bigger part in the Napoli midfield alongside Piotr Zielinski and Fabian Ruiz. I actually think this midfield is among the best midfields in the comp. Napoli will need more output from the attackers, as they simply need to score more goals to crack into the top 4, and I predict the likes of Milik, Mertens and Insigne will step up to the plate. Napoli will just do enough to secure a 4th spot in conclusion. Lazio were set to win the title with a 21 game unbeaten run, but were winless in the first 6 games of the restart as they limped home 4th. Although Lazio have the additional Champions League responsibility this year, they'll again get close to the scudetto. Lazio have one of the best defensive teams in the league, with elite defenders like Francesco Acerbi, Luis Felipe and Radu. Their starting midfield is one of the best too, with Luis Alberto, who'd start in any team in Serie A, and Sergej Milinkovic-Savic, who's still very underrated in my opinion. Lazio's midfield has the most depth out of its positions, as they can also rely on Lucas Leiva, Marco Parolo and Danilo Cataldi too. Additionally, they have good wide players in Senad Luric and Manuel Lazzardi, who can cover the pitch really well. Ciro Immobile had an insane 36 goals last season and is a great chance to be top goal scorer once again, and either Caicedo or Correa are handy second strikers to have as well. The worry for me is that they don't have enough depth to play in multiple competitions, but they do have such a formidable starting 11, so I think they'll finish 3rd. In 2nd place, I have Juventus. Juventus have been on a historical run of 9 consecutive scudettos, but I think this run will finish in 2021. It will be a bit of a sorely needed rebuild project, particularly in midfield, with signings of Weston McKennie and Artur, while Pjanic and Matuidi leave the club. New coach Andrea Pirlo wants to play a more aggressive forward pressing game, so the change in midfield personnel was absolutely necessary. Juve's defense is still good enough, even with the worst defensive showing in years. De Ligt will only get better, and Chiellini is still a fearless warrior, but with him and Bonucci a year older, you have to wonder how much longer they can play at a top level. Even if those two slow down, Demiral should get more game time and he has the tools to become a world-class defender. Cristiano Ronaldo is still playing at a legendary level, and Paulo Dybala will need to have another super season for Juve to be in contention, which he surely will. Dejan Kulusevski is a great signing too, and I really think he's in the right team now where he can truly thrive. Luis Suarez could be still coming to Juve, while Higuain is out of the door, and I can't tell if Douglas Costa will stay for this season, but if he does stay, he is still definitely going to be a very useful player who can be called upon off the bench for Juve. My main concern for Juve is in their full-back positions. They're not depthful in these positions, and I am not a fan of Alexandro and Cuadrado as a full-back, and don't get me started on Di Chilio. I just think he's absolute crap, to be quite honest with you guys. Juve will finish second, I think, due to a rapid change in the team in both personnel and structure. This means that I think Inter will win the scudetto for the first time in over a decade. While for starters, they have the best keeper in the league with Samir Handanovic, although with his age, he could be overtaken this season in this department. Even with the loss of Diego Godin, they should still be the best defensive team in the league with the trio of Di Free, Schirina and Bastoni. Bastoni in particular is a player to keep an eye on, as I believe he could make his debut for the Italian national team in the next 12 months. As we know, Conte loves to work with fullbacks who are full of stamina, and Achraf Hakimi perfectly fits into the Conte game plan and could seriously be one of Serie A's best players and furthermore best signings. Ashley Young has actually been a revelation for this Inter team and is now an important player, while Candreva and another new signing of Kolarov are also great depth options. It's hard not to be impressed with their midfield, with Marcelo Brozovic and Nicola Barella being the two main impressive players in this part of the pitch for Inter. Lukaku and Martinez also work so well together, with Lukaku in particular on fire last season, and Martinez is also more than capable of scoring 20 plus goals in a season. They have good depth too, and just like Beppe Marotta, who built Juve into a super team, he's building this team into a bunch of champions, and I have him lifting the Serie A trophy at the end of the season. To my other predictions, and for Player of the Year, and I might be heavily criticised for this, but I seriously believe that Federico Chiesa could have a season that is out of this world, so I will go with him for this honour. Top goal scorer now, and I have gone with Cristiano Ronaldo, where I think he'll have one last year where he's at a really high level of performance. My coach of the year will be Antonio Conte, just for the fact of my prediction of Inter winning the Scudetto. The team that will surprise, I think, will be Benevento, who I think will stay up in Serie A for the first time in their history. The best signing for me, I think, will go to Sandro Tonali, who will prove to be an elite midfielder. The biggest disappointment for me will be Udinese, who I think they'll get relegated. And the Coppa Italia winner for me, I think, will be AC Milan, just because I feel like they're going to get something out of this season. Let me know in the comments section your predictions for this Serie A season, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more content.